Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu sitting in for Riz Khan. Britain and Argentina went to war over the Falkland Islands almost 3 decades ago. Now tensions between the two countries are rising again after Britain started looking for oil just north of the islands. Sovereignty over the islands has been a sore spot for almost 2 centuries. The Falklands have been a British possession since 1833, but Argentines consider Las Malvinas to be a colonial outpost. The dispute led to a brief but bloody war in 1982 when British forces expelled their Argentine adversaries. So today we ask, are they the Falklands or Las Malvinas? And can the issue be resolved peacefully once and for all? A reminder that you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or email, and of course we also welcome your phone calls on the show. With us today are Douglas Hurd, a veteran British politician who was Minister of State at the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office at the time of the 1982 Falklands War. Lord Hurd joins us from London, and from Buenos Aires, Ambassador Alberto Pedro Dalotto, the Chief of Staff for Argentina's Foreign Minister Jorge Tena, who recently took the dispute to the United Nations. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Lord Hurd, as we mentioned there, it's been 28 years since the Falklands War, and now we have oil exploration getting underway just north of the islands. It's raising tensions again. Argentina is renewing its claims to the islands. We've heard of reports in the past few days of a merchant ship being blocked by Argentina. An attempt was made to block it. We've also heard of a British destroyer in the Falkland Islands, and we've heard that there's a submarine in the region as well. Question is, could these tensions escalate to the point of conflict again?
I don't think so, and the Argentine government has made it clear that it's not going to pursue its claim by military means. So I think that they will not attempt again to seize the Falklands by force. The question, of course, is really what the people who live there really think. How do they answer your question? And I've been there twice, I know it quite well. And I know that they give an overwhelming, unanimous answer. We are British and we intend to stay British. That's the view of the people who actually live on the islands.
Ambassador Dalotto, do you accept that the people on the islands say they want to remain British, Falklands will remain British?
Well, I have to say first that in our understanding, the people living in the islands, people who we respect and all along our history, we have always respected and said that we want to live with them and to live together in respecting their way of life. And in the past, and Mr. Hurd knows very well that during the 60s and the 70s, even the General Assembly of the United Nations congratulated Argentina for the way of helping these people. But there is another problem, and you know that in 1833 Argentina had a population living in the islands, and this population was expelled by a warship coming from the United Kingdom at that time. And since then we have always protested against the United Kingdom and asked for recognition of the fact that there is a sovereignty dispute over the islands. So we respect the people living in the islands, we want to have friendship relations with them, but we want to sit down and, as the General Assembly has requested, having the possibility of starting discussion of the question of sovereignty. And I have to remind that the United Kingdom agreed with this before 1982, but now after the war they decided not to continue conversations with us on this matter.
Lord Hurd, 2 points there. One, the ambassador there telling us that Argentina is willing to share those islands with British residents over there right now. And the other point,
that's very kind of the Argentines. What he's saying is we respect the islanders as long as they come under the Argentine flag. Well, that's the one thing they don't want to do. And if anything confirmed them in that view, it was, of course, the Argentine attack on 1982, which did huge harm, huge damage to the possibility of a cooperation between the islanders and the Argentine mainland, which such cooperation is obviously a very good sense, very practical sense.
And the other point the ambassador made there was that there were Argentines living on the island up until 1833, and they were expelled.
Well, we can go back into history if we like. But it seems to me that in the year 2000 and whatever it is, 2000 plus, in the 2000s, we are now living in a world in which you cannot treat human beings as if they are just pieces on a board. You belong to this country, you belong to that. You ask them what they want, and you abide by you respect the result. And to say that we respect the islanders, but we don't have any intention of listening to their views on who they belong to. I've been there several times, and I don't know any part of the world in which the Britishness of the inhabitants is more clear. They are exactly like parts of Britain were several years ago. They are naturally and passionately British, and that again was shown by their reactions in 1982.
Ambassador, is the Argentine position to treat the people on the island as if they are people on a board who can be moved, who can be changed?
No, not at all. Our position, as I mentioned before, has always been a position of respect of the human rights and the way of life of the people living in the islands. Of course, there was an exception during the conflict in 1982. This conflict was started by an illegitimate government of Argentina at the time, but you know very well that since 1983 we have a full democracy, respecting human rights, attached to international law, and we, even in our constitution, it is said that the recovery of the islands to Argentine sovereignty has to be done according to the principles of international law and by peaceful means. So there is no possibility at all for legal reasons, but also for reasons of which is the deep feeling of our country, is to solve this in a peaceful way. But the United Kingdom has to understand that there is a claim coming from the 19th century, and they have to comply to several resolutions of the General Assembly of the United Nations since 1965. There are resolutions telling the United Kingdom and telling Argentina that they have to sit down and discuss the question of sovereignty. We have done this, and the British have done this in the past. But after 1982, they didn't want to continue with this. But I suppose that we have to agree that the war is not a mean to solve question of sovereignty. They have to agree that, as the General Assembly has said, this is a colonial enclave, and we don't have to forget that, and we are in the 21st century, and colonialism is something unacceptable. So, in the respect of the rights of the people in the islands, we have to discuss the main question here, that's the one thing that Lord Hurd, I believe he doesn't want to discuss.
Okay, we had a slight problem with our satellite link there to Buenos Aires. Let's go to Lord Hurd. Lord Hurd, we heard there that Britain's practicing colonialism here. We also heard before that that Britain is unwilling to discuss the sovereignty of the island.
Because we have no doubt about it, because the views of the inhabitants are, in our view, paramount. And if you are attacked in your house by somebody who ties you up and imprisons you, and then that person comes, albeit with a different government, some years later, and says, well, we still want to tie you up, we still want to imprison you, but we will do it by peaceful means, you are not inclined, after you've had this experience in the past, to welcome them or to say, let us sit down and discuss this matter. There is nothing, on the question of sovereignty, there is nothing to discuss. It's not an issue of the 19th century, it's an issue of the 21st century, in which the rights of human beings to decide their own future is increasingly recognized.
In your view, does Argentina have any legal basis to make these claims to the Falklands?
No, we don't think that there is, and that's why we accept that the right of British companies to drill for oil. It will take some years to discover whether there is actually oil in worthwhile quantities, and much will depend on the price of oil in the oil market and so on. So there's a long way to go before it becomes an oil, before it starts producing those billions of gallons of oil that is talked about. So it's a long-term prospect, and not all the islanders are in favor of turning their country into an oil reservoir. So it's a slightly controversial and sensitive point, but we don't have any doubt about one point, which is that legally internationally, under international law, we have the right to persevere and to see if there is oil.
Ambassador, Lord Hood brought up the issue of oil. That is the point of contention right now. How much of a problem is this for Argentina, the fact that British companies are now drilling for oil very close to the Falklands?
Well, the reason we have present all these notes of protest to the government of the United Kingdom is that we believe that the exploration of the continental shelf, it is made in an area of dispute, and we cannot consent to that. I mean, this we believe, and we even have discussed many times with our friends from the United Kingdom, that this is included in an area that is under dispute of sovereignty, and there are several resolutions of the United Nations, of the General Assembly, telling that both parties have to refrain of any kind of unilateral activities that is changing the situation in the area that is another process of negotiations on the central fact of sovereignty. I can mention Resolution 3149 of the General Assembly. There is clearly said that it is clearly established that any unilateral action is something that has to be, both parties has to abstain of introducing any kind of change. There is a process that has been interrupted in 1982 that we want to resume. There is an action of good offices by the Secretary General of the United Nations, and we expect our friends from the United Kingdom to comply to this recommendation made by the international community.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break right now. Widely differing opinions here, as expected. We'd also like to hear from you, of course. You can call us with your view. The number is right there on your screen right now. Don't forget, you can also email or SMS us as well. We're going to take a short break right now. More of our discussion in a moment. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're discussing the long dormant dispute between Britain and Argentina over a string of islands in the South Atlantic known as the Falklands or Las Malvinas, depending on where you stand. I'm joined from London by former British Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd, who joins us from the British capital. He's also the author of the book Choose Your Weapons, a look back at 2 centuries of successes and failures of British foreign policy. We also have with us top Argentine Foreign Ministry official Alberto Pedro Dalotto, who joins us from Buenos Aires. Gentlemen, welcome back to both of you. Ambassador, let me start with you for this half of the program. We received an email here from Matt Peake, and he writes, Argentina has never owned these islands. Their argument is based only on its proximity.
Well, I have to say that this is wrong. I recommend this person to give a look in some books of history, but there are clear demonstrations that Argentina inherited these territories from Spain when we became independent in 1816. We established people there, we established a government since 1820, and we stayed there for almost 13 years. There are several acts of or demonstration of sovereignty, of exercise of sovereignty on those islands until 1833, when the United Kingdom, I mentioned this before, sent a warship and expelled the people there. And since then, we have always protested consistently all over the years and never accepting this act of force.
Okay, let's go to the phones. We have a caller from Virginia, right here in the United States. Sal from Virginia. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, my question is, British last 500 years, they've been ruling the Asia and as well as South America, and still they are doing so. I like to ask that foreign secretary that why you guys are still not apologizing to the world, you the ruin and making some hotspot all over the world. Kashmir, millions of people dying because of your strategy. Mistake, and as well as Palestine, as well as in India. So how long is you gonna do that? You're a strategy of weapon.
Okay, Sal, let's put that question to Lord Hood.
In this particular case of the Falkland Islands, we are acting absolutely and 100% with the almost unanimous views of the people who live there. This is exactly the opposite of what you are saying from Virginia. In this case, we are entirely on the side of the people who live there, on the side of the population. One could go back into history and say, how did those people come here? But is that really the best way of tackling it? If you transfer the sovereignty and give it to Argentina, you immediately antagonize the whole of the people who live on the islands. And we saw in 1982 what happened. They retained, they were determined to regain and keep their British sovereignty.
Lord Hurd, one other thing, and that is the British relationship with the United States concerning the Falkland Islands. Of course, world politics is very dynamic, it changes all the time. Argentina now has the support of some pretty influential South American nations like Brazil, like Mexico, in its claim to the Falklands. Very recently, the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton tried to play some kind of a mediation role. Let's listen to what she had to say, and then I have a question after that.
We want very much to encourage both countries to sit down. Now, we cannot make either one do so, but we think it is the right way to proceed. So we will be saying this publicly, as I have been, and we will continue to encourage exactly the kind of discussion across the table that needs to take place.
Now, Lord Hurd, of course, that is not the unconditional kind of support you had from Ronald Reagan, that Margaret Thatcher had from Ronald Reagan during the war in 1982. But circumstances have changed, haven't they?
We had a lot of trouble with the United States in 1982. The Secretary of State was Haig at the time, and he made strong efforts, rather on the lines that Hillary Clinton was saying, to create some kind of peaceful settlement. But it didn't work because it came up against this obstacle of the actual views of the actual islanders.
Well, let's go to Ambassador Dell'Otto. Ambassador, is there a danger that if Britain continues with its efforts to drill for oil near the islands, that British business interests in Argentina could be affected at some stage?
What I had to say is there is no danger for British interests in Argentina, but we have established a number, or the government has promoted a number of measures where if oil companies, not from Britain, for every country of the world, are working in the islands and exploring the continental shelf in the area of dispute, and if these companies are established in Argentina, they will receive sanctions. That is the legal framework that the government has right now, but there is no danger for British investors and British interests in Argentina.
Lord Hurd, we have another email here from Larry Happiday. He writes to us and he says, what interest do the British have in the Falkland Islands, thousands of kilometers away? Has imperialism not ended?
Imperialism has ended in the sense that no longer does Britain or any other country that I know of seek to impose its dominion, its will on other countries and annex them, take them over by force. The world doesn't accept that anymore. And in the Falklands, we are exactly the opposite. We are protecting the basic rights of the islanders to decide under which government they wish to live. That is what the whole issue is about. And now, of course, it's in our interest, in the interest of the Falkland Islanders, to cooperate with Argentina. The main source of income for the islanders is not oil, it's fish. And when I was Foreign Secretary, we discussed with the Argentines ways in which we could cooperate on scientific research, their ships, our ships, and we began to create a cooperation there. That, I think, has gone backwards since then. But that's the sort of cooperation on practical, everyday matters which we would like to see.
Well, when it comes to the question concerning oil, I mean, there are many oil analysts, people in the oil industry, who say that it's highly unlikely that any oil exploration could be managed without Argentina's cooperation. Now, is that something you're prepared to discuss with the Argentines?
Well, I think that we're a long way from those kind of practical discussions. We're not in the business. The companies are not in the business of establishing exactly how they would bring the oil out if they decided there was sufficient oil there to be seriously interesting from their point of view. If they did reach that point, when I think this is several years away, then of course there could be discussions with Argentina, not about sovereignty, but about the actual ways and means of dealing with the oil, just as we have had discussions in the past about ways and means of dealing with the fish.
Okay, I want to get one other question very quickly in from one of our viewers. Simeo calling from Venezuela. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, the argument about the will of the people who live in the island is not acceptable because it is a transplanted population. I mean, once England conquered the island, they transplanted the population from the UK. And this is against international law.
Okay, Simeo, we don't have much time. Lord Hood, we have about 45 seconds if you want to address that question, please.
Well, these people went there freely, of their own free will. They weren't transplanted there. And once they're there, they are passionately British. And we have no wish to alter that situation. That is, they are loyal to the Crown, and that is their settled and determined view, as we saw in 1982. You can't shift that.
Lord Hood, Ambassador Dell'Otto, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, we look at the risks being taken by Arab bloggers and cyber activists and discuss whether internet freedoms have had an effect on politics and social change in the Middle East. Make sure to tune in for that. We'll see you the next time.